I worked nude often to practice this, and I can remember once in my office practicing it, nude in the corner, and my wife, Sue, coming in and opening the door and seeing her husband huddled in a fetal position, nude on the floor. First a little shocked, and then she, "Oh no, you're an actor." "Oh, okay." I said, close it, kind of confused. The Last Picture Show, Dwayne Jackson. The Last Picture Show. I was sure lucky to get on board with that one. My agent said to have a casting call. I went in. I think, according to Peter Bogdanovich, I was the first one cast. Every once in a while you go through the door and they say, that's the guy. And I guess that was the case with me, so I really lucked out. What a wonderful film that is. It's not like any movie, and no movie's like it. It just sits there by itself. As far as preparing for the role, there was a young man who was about 16 years old, a fellow by the name of Lloyd Catlett, hired for a small part in the movie, as well as teaching us California kids how to be Texas kids. Lloyd did a wonderful job, and he kind of fell in love with the circus, with the movie biz. And now it turns out, I don't know how many years later that is, 50 years later or whatever it is, Lloyd has been my stand-in for all of those movies, for over 60 films together. I was nominated for Best Supporting Actor that year for Last Picture Show. These were in the days when there was really no campaign or anything like that. I remember I was just a 19-year-old kid. Somebody waking me up about 4 o'clock in the morning and said, "You've been nominated for an Academy." I said, "Oh my God," I couldn't believe it. It was a big surprise. Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. Lightfoot. That was Michael Cimino's first film that he directed, and he wrote it as well. As you might know, Clint Eastwood, who was the producer and star of that film, he likes to do maybe 1 or 2 takes. I was the punk kid who, I'd go over to Mike Cimino and I'd say, can I do one more? He says, "I got to ask the boss," and Clint would say, "Oh, give the kid a shot. Go ahead." So I really appreciated that. And then later in Heaven's Gate, oh gosh, we would take, 40, 50, 60 takes sometimes. So it was quite a bit different. Michael Cimino, I remember. Now this is going to be a little kind of a long story, but it might be a good one. That was early on in my career, this Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, and I remember being very anxious, and I didn't really feel like the character at all. And I went into Cimino the day before we shot, and I was really upset. I said, "Mike, I'm sorry I'm doing this, but I got to tell you, I think you got the wrong guy for this part. I don't know how to do this part. I'm really, I don't feel like this guy at all." And he gave me a brilliant piece of direction that I still hold close to my heart. He said, "Do you know the game tag?" And I said, yeah. He says, "Well, you're it." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You are the guy. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. So whatever you do, that's what the guy does. You're it. Tag, you're it." King Kong, Jack Prescott. See, I remember growing up and ditching high school, or not high school, grammar school, pretending I was sick when I would look in the TV guide and see that King Kong, that old, one from the 30s was on. I loved that movie. And so when I got offered the part in the updated version, I was all excited about it. We shot that movie for 9 months, I think, and it was a beautiful location in Kauai, and a wonderful cast: Charles Grodin, Jessica Lange. That was Jessica Lange's first movie, I believe, and I thought she just nailed that part. Rick Baker, I think that was one of his first big extravagant makeup assignments. He played the monkey for a while, and then they had a big statue of the monkey. But I can remember one moment where they had a giant hand that was going to hold Jessica Lange. The hand was built in Italy, and they had a separate Italian fella on each finger to move the fingers like this. And the director, John Gillerman, he was very frustrating because he would say, "All right, tighter," and then the Italian guy would say, "All right, whatever, tighter." And it was very hard to communicate, so John Gillerman finally said, "Just watch my hand." And he held his hand up over his head. And he had all these Italian guys on these levers looking at John, and here's Jessica in the middle of this giant hand. And Well, you had to be there. It sounds frightening because he almost got crushed to death, you know, but it was one of those things that's humorous and frightening all at the same time. That was a long-winded, weird story. I don't know that band. Tron 1 and 2, Kevin Flynn. Steven Lisberger came up with this idea of Tron. What would it be like if a person was sucked inside a computer? And wow, wild idea, and he had such a great imagination. Back in the day when we did the first Tron, it was shot in black and white, 70 millimeter black and white. We were all in these leotards with soccer helmets on, I think they were, or ice hockey helmets, I can't remember. We were all encouraged to wear colorful clothes to work because everything was black and white when we were shooting. All hand tinted in Korea, I think, you know, later. Sequels are wonderful when you have a character that you get to play again, and Tron's a good example of that. Joe Kosinski was the director of this one. It was his first movie. Can you imagine directing a $200 million movie for your first movie? But Joe took to it like a duck to water. He created a great atmosphere. It was very, very easy going, and I think the film turned out pretty good. Starman. Yeah, Starman. I remember going in for an interview with John Carpenter, the director of that film, and I had this idea of Starman was really impersonating a human being as best as he could. It wasn't a very good impersonation at first. If he was leaning on something, for instance, us human beings, we lean, and there's a purpose to it, but Starman would do that same thing, but it would be assuming the position, but he wouldn't put his weight on it, that kind of thing. John seemed to like that. Oh God, what a day, huh?
Yeah.
Oh. Often when I'm making a movie, I'll say, who of my friends remind me of this character? And I was looking through my phone book, say, what friend would I not be surprised to find out was an alien from another planet? And I came across this wonderful fella, Russell Clark, who was a dancer. And we worked quite a bit on that beginning scene when Starman is being born. And I figured if I could get that in these movements, then I could just gradually become more human as the movie went on. Karen Allen was just remarkable in that movie. If you're playing a king in a movie and nobody's treating you like a king, well, then you ain't a king, and that goes for being an alien in a movie too. And she made it all come together, made it all so real. The Big Lebowski playing the dude. What can I say? Let's see. Gosh, it was such a good time. I got to work with my good buddy T-Bone Burnett, who did all that wonderful music. And of course, the Coen brothers, God, those guys, they're masters. They make it look so easy. And it's just such a terrific movie. I'm not a guy who looks at a lot of my movies on TV or whatever, but when that movie comes on, I get hooked. I'll say, I'll just watch it, just watch till Turturro licks the ball, and then I'll, click. I'm a clicker guy, go into something else. But then I'll say, oh no, I'll just wait for that scene there, and I ended up watching the whole thing. It's just made so well, that film. Years later, a friend of mine, Bernie Glassman, who happened to be a Zen master, said, you realize in many circles the dude is considered a Zen master. I said, what are you talking about? We never talked spirituality or Buddhism or none of that stuff. He says, oh yeah. Who wrote and directed the film? The Coen brothers. A koan are these Zen questions like, what is the sound of one hand clapping, these sort of things. And he says, that movie, The Big Lebowski, is filled of modern day koans. I said, really? He said, sure, like the dude abides. That's a very Buddhist kind of thought, or that's just like your opinion, man.
Liam and me, we're gonna fuck you up.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
The Coen brothers, they're such terrific writers. I find a lot of people, are wondering if there was a lot of improv in that movie because it's kind of, the dialogue seems so natural. And no, there was not. It was all down the page, every fuck, every man. You wanted them in the right spot because it was like music. In rehearsal, we would improv to kind of find the life of the scene, but when it got down to shooting, Man, I was always looking at the strip to find out where the man is, where the F-bomb is. Those guys, the masters. True Grit, Rooster Cogburn. True Grit. Well, I get to work with the Coens again. That was, so wonderful. Great cast. Josh Brolin and Haley Steinfeld just nailed that part. Very difficult part. I get to ride too, man. I get to do that thing. Put that into my. It was fun playing cowboys. The Contender, President Jackson. I'm pretty fussy, I try to work as little as possible, because I know what it implies. You go to work and it takes you away from your family and all your other interests. And also, when you're doing that movie, you're unable to do this movie coming down the pike that you're not even sure what that movie is, but you might like it better. So I really try to hold out as long as I can. Prior to getting the script of The Contender, I'd held out a pretty long time. And I read that script, and I remember yelling out to my wife, Sue, "Hey, I think we got one!" It's wonderful in the film when the writer knows the world that he's writing about. And Rod Lurie really knew what he was talking about. He was a reporter, and he got into the reporting business so he could talk to filmmakers, because he was really interested in directing films. Then the other big plus for that movie was working with Joan Allen, who I'd worked with in Tucker years before. She played my wife in that, and here I was going to support her in this wonderful role. As far as role models for that film, who I used is my father, Lloyd Bridges, who I learned all my basics from my dad, the acting basics, but the main thing I learned from him wasn't something not in words or anything like that, but just observing how he was when he worked on a set. He enjoyed this thing that we do so much that it was contagious, and it kind of spread through the company, and oh yeah, this is kind of fun. And I thought that was the same kind of energy that this President Jackson had. I think, and Clinton had it too. He really enjoyed being president, and I think Jackson did too. Iron Man, Obadiah Stane. Well, a lot of funny memories come to me. Jon Favreau and Robert Downey Jr. were on board, and we thought the script needed a lot of work. We had 2 weeks of rehearsal, and we met together, and we really ironed the thing out quite well, we all thought. And then a day before shooting, we get a message from the Marvel folks. This was Marvel's first superhero movie. They said, "Oh, no, the script, you changed it all wrong." We said, "Oh my God, what are we going to do?" Well, what we did is that we would often meet in my trailer before work for 2 or 3 hours trying to figure out what we're going to shoot that day. There was no script. The crew would be in there tapping their foot waiting for us, and we'd be in there, playing each other's parts and improvising. John would be calling writer friends of his, and it was driving me absolutely crazy. I like to know my lines until I made a little adjustment inside, and it turned it all around. And that little adjustment was me talking to myself and just saying, "Jeff, please, relax. You are making a $200 million student film. That's it. Just have fun. You got Jon Favreau and Downey. They're so good, man. Relax and have fun." I said, "Oh, that's right." So that's what we did. We just jammed, had a great time, and I think it's up there on the screen. You got Downey, who was a master, and Favreau. He's so skilled at so many things that are important making a movie. Not only is he a great improviser and actor and writer and director and all that stuff, but he can talk with the suits. He knows how to not blow it and get the job done. And look at his movies; it's wonderful. Crazy Heart, Bad Blake. Crazy Hot. Man. Again, got to work with my good buddy T-Bone Burnett. I remember turning that movie down quite a few times because there was no music to it. So I thought, it would be great to do a musician. I love playing guitar, but the fact that I don't have any music, I can let that one go. And then I ran into my buddy T-Bone, and he said, "What do you think about this Crazy Heart script?" And I said, "Well, there's no music to it." He says, "Oh, that's the easy part." I said, "Well, are you interested in doing it?" He says, "Well, I'll do it if you'll do it." And I said, "Really?" So off we went, and such a joyous experience. Scott Cooper, it was his first movie that he wrote and directed. He's by far one of my favorite directors to work with. The part of playing a country singer was so wonderful. I've been playing guitar since I've been a kid. It opened my my music world in such a beautiful way. I have a band I go out on the road with now called the Abiders, and I think all of that came from Crazy Heart. Hell or High Water, Marcus Hamilton. Wow, Hell or High Water. David Mackenzie, great director. I was a big fan of his film called Starred Up, and I figured, oh, this guy is going to do wonderful, and man, he sure did. One of the great pleasures for me in that movie was working with Gil Birmingham, who I had most of my scenes with. Wonderful actor. You know, you're very lucky when you're making a movie when you get an authentic version of the guy you're playing, and we were so fortunate to have Joaquin Jackson, who is one of the foremost Texas Rangers on board. Oh man, he taught me so much. Not only, you know, how the guys look and their attitude, but just being in the proximity of one of those guys. You seem to, I don't know, something just kind of comes over when they're open to you, you know, and Joaquin certainly was. Bad Times at the El Royale, Father Daniel Flynn. It's wonderful when the writer and director are the same person, you know, because you got the source there directing you on the thing, and when you get a director like Drew, who has a very strong opinion of how it should go, but he's also open to everybody else's ideas, that's my favorite. And Drew was certainly that type of director and really created a great environment on the set for us all to have a good time and, you know, do our best work by keeping us relaxed, you know. But the movie is by no means a relaxed kind of movie. There's lots of twists and turns and a lot of surprises. It was more the story than the character. I love what the story was saying, what the movie was saying. I enjoyed working with Nick Offerman, who played my brother, and all the guys, you know, John Hamm, Chris Hemsworth, wonderful cast. Geez, I made a lot of good movies, huh?